Welcome back. It's me, Lou. So today we're gonna do something a little bit different. I want to share with you something I kind of customized recently. So as I've mentioned in previous videos, one of the things I've been kind of dabbling around in with the past year and a half is tabletop gaming. I really got into the little tiny miniatures like this, and I also really got into this like the physical terrain, whether it's buying terrain and painting them up and assembling them, or customizing or even crafting my own terrain. And one thing I kind of really wanted in for fantasy tabletop gaming was a Hobbit Hole. So if you're familiar with the Lord of the Rings movies and the Hobbit and stuff, y'all know what a Hobbit Hole is. It's kind of like what like Frodo and Bilbo live in. It's like a house in a hill, and I kind of really wanted one. And I wasn't sure if Games Workshop, they make a line of Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit tabletop gaming miniatures, and they make some terrain pieces also. But I don't know if they make an actual Hobbit Hole. So I was kind of thinking, I really want a Hobbit Hole, but I don't want to I don't want to take the time to make one myself. So I'm like, okay, what's the next best thing I could do? So I combed around on Amazon, and I was kind of wondering, you know what? I think they might make Hobbit Holes for fish aquariums. So I did a search for that on Amazon, and lo and behold, I found a whole range of just different sizes of Hobbit Holes that are made for your aquarium if you have fish. And I kind of found one that I thought might work for tabletop gaming. Now I can't remember specifically the size of this. All I remember is that when I was on Amazon and I was looking at the catalog listing, I was looking at the photos of it, and then they tell you in the different photos how large something was, and then I think this one was maybe 7 inches across, and then in my head I'm like, okay, what's 7 inches? And I pulled out a miniature and tried to figure out the scale of whether or not it'd work. So I got lucky. The model I purchased, the Hobbit Hole display piece, for your aquarium, the one I got, luckily is a good decent scale for miniature gaming. And when I got it, it looked cool. The sculpting was nice. It's better than what I could have probably crafted myself, and it feels a bit more official since it's pre-built. But as you can see here, the details are nice. There's no doors or windows because this is an aquarium piece made for fish. So if you put this in your fish tank, this is a nice thing for fish to hide in, and they can swim in and out of it. I believe this is made of a resin material. The paint job on it was okay. It wasn't the greatest. It was kind of a little bit anemic. The colors weren't as deep and as rich as I wanted them. So I went ahead and I kind of repainted most of this. I repainted a lot of it, added some washes and some highlights to really bring out the foliage on the top of the roof. I painted in the windows, at least some windows, in black. And I think it's a great piece. And we'll pull out one of my miniatures here. So this is a Dungeons and Dragons miniature that I painted up. It's the character Minsk with his hamster Boo on his shoulder right there. And if you look, the scale's pretty decent. It works. If you look here, let me get better in the light. Yeah, so this Hobbit Hole, the scale works for this. And alright, so I got this, and I'm like, okay, it's a cool display piece, and it's a cool piece to put on your tabletop. But it bothered me a lot that there was no door. And I'm like, you know what, I can just make a door myself. If you look on the inside, it's completely hollow. I painted it black. It was this god-awful yellow resin color, and it looked terrible. So I'm like, I'm just going to paint it black. So I painted the interior black. But I kind of needed to figure out a way to just cover this up. My first initial thought was maybe I could cut out a piece of cardboard or foam core and just glue a fake door on here. But then the gears started spinning, and I was like, you know what? Why don't we just kind of make an interior for this? So my thought was, okay, we're going to make an interior. Let's make a floor. So I kind of measured out the dimensions of this in terms of a rectangle, and then I kind of shrunk it down just a little bit by a hair, just so it cover the base but not extrude past the edges. And I took a piece of craft wood that I got at my local hobby shop, which is this. And what I did here was I had a piece of terrain door, and this one here was from a Warlock Tiles Tavern kit. And it's produced by WizKids and NECA, and as a spare door piece I had, I'm like, you know what, I could use that as a door. And then I kind of had to map out where this would be glued onto the floor, so that when I place this over, not only would it line up on the bottom correctly, but then when you view it from the front, it has a door. So then, if you're playing, hypothetically speaking, if you're playing, this is on your table, and then let's say you have your miniature, and it's time for them to enter the building. You can remove this, and then you have the recreation of the space on the inside. You go mark the doors open by opening the doors. It's kind of weird though, because the doors it's not placed in the exact front of the structure. And that's only because the door here isn't placed in the exact front of the structure either. But you can always just compensate, once you're on the interior. You can always just say that only this space is playable. Or maybe you could even say these designated areas could be closet space or back rooms. You can even say that maybe this is a cupboard. Say this is like an interior kitchen space. Or if you want, use your imagination. Say once you go through this door, pretend this could be another door, and maybe I'll lead you to another part of the home. So in terms of the way I detailed this, is that so normally this is what the plain wooden board looks like. As I've stated previously, I cut it down to size, and then I took some thin craft sticks, glued them on top to give it the appearance of like a wooden floor. Afterwards, I took some craft paint, and I believe the color I used was chestnut, and I began to color all the boards this chestnut color. And then the final step to give it kind of this wood grain finish, I took Agrax Earth Shade, which is produced by Citadel Paints, which is part of Games Workshop, and that's a shade, and that's a wash, and I just used that to shade the wood and give it this wood grain kind of finish. The door was glued on with Gorilla Glue, and if you look carefully, the door isn't glued directly onto these wooden boards. I actually glued the door. First thing I did was I glued the door directly onto the wooden board, but I had to map out to make sure it was in the correct area. Then afterwards, once I started putting the boards in place, I made sure to measure out these boards here specifically, so it would, these boards here are shorter than these boards. These boards run the full length of the floor, whereas these shorter boards on the side of the door just start from the edge and then they end right where the door is. So you can pretend, you're playing your interior. Here's your little halfling, your little hobbit guy, and you could, if you have scattered terrain, you could like furnish it with like, I don't know, a stove, oven, maybe a cabinet or whatever. If you want to say this is like maybe a wizard's hut, maybe you have an alchemy table or a bench or who knows what else. So how does this look on the gaming table? Alright, so I have this here. This is produced by Monster. It's the Monster Adventure Terrain. It's part of their modular tile system. And, you can just place it on top of here, and, there's your little Hobbit Hole. So, just using your imagination, something like this is a great piece. So, which brings me to this. Okay, so, when it comes to gaming terrain, if you can't find what you're looking for, like if you can't find a specific terrain piece, like if they don't make it, or if you could find them and if it's too expensive, or if you don't have the crafting skill to make it yourself, be resourceful, look around. And in my case, being resourceful meant searching and thinking outside of the box. I knew that, like, in the world of aquariums, they make, scenery for aquariums, and my thought was, maybe they make a Hobbit Hole, and lo and behold, they did. And, if you look around for the kind of different stuff and accessories they make for aquariums, you'll find all sorts of crazy things. They make castles, they make little fairy houses, they make all sorts of weird pirate-themed things. So there's already this wealth of like pre-made terrain that could fit like a fantasy setting, but it's affordable because they're made for aquariums. But the only thing is, you just have to be careful. The quality control on some of those things might not be the best, so you might have to touch up some of the things either by painting them. In my case, I had to paint this, and there were some hard edges here that I kind of needed to like grind down and file out, just because I didn't want to like accidentally poke or hurt myself. But otherwise, it's a great piece. The fact that it's to scale with my miniatures, I can easily add this to my tabletop. Or if you're into like diorama making, you buy something like this and half the work's already done for you because it's pre-made. So yeah, the world of aquariums, there's all sorts of fun accessories that could be easily incorporated into tabletop gaming. You just have to like this, go out there and look and see what's out there. So if I had to rate this thing numerically, if straight out of the box, the way I received this, I'd probably say this thing is a 6 to a 7. Probably closer to a 7. The reason why I wouldn't rate it higher is because, for one, it's not intended for gaming use. Two, the paint job wasn't the greatest, so I actually had to put some work into it, which in the end it paid off because it looks beautiful. And three, there was no floor, so I had to create that for myself, which for me, I enjoyed the crafting end of like making scatter terrain and terrain structures. So for me, this was just a bonus. But the end result was great. For me to take something that like was initially purposed for like fish aquariums and to repurpose it for tabletop gaming, there was a certain amount of satisfaction in that. So if you're a fan of like Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and you wanted to create a diorama, for your bookshelf, go out there and get yourself one of these things and touch it up. If you're into fantasy or tabletop gaming, like whether you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, or like Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, it's kind of essential that you have a home for your dwarves and your halflings, and I think this is an excellent piece to add to your terrain collection. So let's wrap this up. Once again, my name is Lou. I know this is a slightly different video as opposed to the action figure stuff I normally do, but I love the world of miniatures, especially tabletop gaming. I'm not into the gaming aspect yet, but I do love assembling miniatures. I love painting the models. For me, it's a great stress reliever, especially after a long day at work. I like to if I have the time, I like to put aside an hour or two in the evening just to like paint and put stuff together. And for me, I don't have time to play. I'm horrible. I don't have the patience to learn the rules, but there might be some evenings where I'll just sit at my table and then I'll just fiddle around with stuff. Not that I'm playing with my toys, but there's something very therapeutic about this like chilling and relaxing and just creating a small diorama scene for yourself. You get to imagine all this crazy worlds. And I love like RPG video games like the Elder Scrolls series, but I don't always have time to play it. And for me, just being able to hold something like this in my hand and even for like a minute or two, I'm kind of whisked away into another world and I kind of forget about what's going on in real life. And for me, that's kind of the joy of all this kind of stuff. I don't know, but I hope you can find some enjoyment in this kind of stuff, whether it's this or action figures or something. I hope you have some sort of outlet to explore your creativity or even just to like decompress. Well, I'm kind of running off on a major tangent here. I'm going to sign off now. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Feel free to drop by anytime. Take care.